Welcome to Gusto with Ashley Sterling.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Gusto with Ashley Sterling. My name is Ashley Sterling, and it's official. It's December 1st. We've almost made it through 2020. The year is winding down, and I know that there's time for celebration with the holidays. Hopefully socially distanced and or remotely or virtually. But I also know that a lot of people are, looking for their next line of work, looking for a job, or even just looking for their next opportunity, their next step. I've taken the last few weeks to discuss the best tips to finding your job, specifically in a pandemic, with experts, with specialists, friends, family, colleagues, even with some of you. And during that process, two vital tools of modern day job searching often didn't come up. I was actually pretty surprised at how little I heard about these areas of focus and how many of you felt frustrated or at an impasse. You felt you were at the mercy of whomever was in charge of the careers page, or, did that email go through, or am I being, too aggressive by adding these folks on LinkedIn, or, just what should I do? I feel stuck. That's something I kept hearing. I feel stuck. So today's episode is for the job searcher, the opportunity seeker, and the passion-oriented. It's difficult to find a job, nonetheless, a dream job, even without a pandemic, putting millions of people out of work. I hope this episode helps at least one person, and I hope you know that you are the only one with your experience. And it's time to make your move. So on today's episode of Gusto, we are going to discuss resumes and working with recruiters. The first tool I really want to focus on is your resume. Now, a lot of folks cringe when they hear this word. To me, it kind of reminds me of homework. Sorry, mom and dad. Specifically the homework that I didn't touch until it was due the day before. Or maybe a book you've been meaning to read, and it's just sitting there on the shelf, and you look at it and you go, one day I will read you. Well, your resume, if you've listened to episode 5 of Gusto, you know that keeping your LinkedIn profile up to date is vital. If you are aiming to network or use it to its highest potential, it shouldn't only be updated when you're looking for a job. It should be updated regularly. Use it as a networking tool. Same thing with your resume. Whenever you update your LinkedIn, update your resume. So a couple of tips when it comes to updating your resume, specifically in a digital world. Some of these tips have been pulled from a few different articles, which will be listed on my resources page on my website. It's ashleysterling.com/resources. One being, look for keywords that are in the job posting that you're looking for, or the dream job that you're looking for. LinkedIn has a great tool where you can put in the type of job or the role that you're aiming for, and it will give you job alerts. So it's a really nice way to keep in the know of who's hiring, how often they're hiring. And also it gives you a chance to take a look at the company, see who else is working there, and potentially connect, with a hiring manager or an HR representative. Also, review resume examples from your industry. I think that this one is one that I personally have never really considered. I've looked at resume examples, growing up, specifically moving from being in the cosmetology industry and doing hair and focusing on beauty, to suddenly working with animals in an emergency hospital. How do you summarize where you want to go from there with such drastically different industries? Well, I mean, looking at examples of the industry probably could have helped me with that. Luckily, I did have luck on my side when it came to moving into corporate America, but I am also very guilty of not utilizing the tools that we're covering today. In some scenarios. Certainly I've utilized a lot of them, but that's one reason I wanted to put this list together for you so that you don't have to do the groundwork that I've done. One other thing that I thought was interesting from this Indeed resume tips article was use a professional font. You know, I've always come from the kind of the standing of, I think resume should have a little bit of personality. You know, it should have a little bit of you represented in there. You know, not too much. Like, we're not talking about a tie-dye piece of paper with a photo of your cat on it, but maybe something just a little bit more along the lines of something that's a little you. So I think that's one thing that I kind of want to highlight as when it's necessary, use a professional font. Though if you are someone like a creative graphic designer or illustrator, I think having some additional personality in there wouldn't hurt. But let me know your thoughts. I would love to hear your feedback. You know, do you have any experience with that? Again, all of these tips will be included on my website. But I do have specific tips from an executive assistant, an HR specialist. She actually works for a law firm in Illinois and was kind enough to give me these tips. Thank you very much. So number one, she recommends be honest. Be prepared to speak on anything you've included, even if it's from years ago. Number two, think of your resume like an Instagram page. Curate it for who you are trying to attract, aka the role, and keep it to the highlights. You can get into the depths, into the detail in the interview. Unless you are a 65-year-old executive going out for a CEO position, there's no need for your resume to be longer than 2 pages. And that's also a really important point. I want to kind of divert here for just a moment. I've heard in the last couple of weeks, your resume needs to be 1 page. It needs to be 2 pages. It needs to be 1 page but double-sided. My resume personally is 2 pages. And it is 2 pages because the important information that I want potential employers to know, certainly the employer that I currently work for to know, is I have this experience. These are the skills that I have. These are my accomplishments. This is where I've come from, but I've kept it very clean. I've kept it very intentional. So certainly don't make it longer than 2 pages, but it doesn't have to be 1 page. You don't have to fit every single detail of the last 10 years of your professional experience on 1 page at a 7 font. Like, you just don't. So my recommendation for that, keep it to 2 pages if it makes sense. If you just have a lot of fluff in there, narrow it down. And also, this is her next point, number 4, for the love of God, there better not be a spelling mistake. Now, I am not the best person when it comes to spell checking, certainly not my own work, but my colleagues can attest to this, that I don't see spelling errors if they're screaming at me from my computer screen. That is up to our quality assurance team. That is not up to me. I'm very detail oriented when it comes to everything else, but when it comes to spelling specifically, nope, not my forte. So always have someone double check your resume. Just take a look at it. Someone that you know specializes or works in the area of either copywriting, editing, someone that you know has a really good eye, and someone that you trust. And just ask them, hey, I put this together. Would you take a look at it? Because I'm worried that I may have missed a spelling error, or, maybe there's just improper grammar. Just take a look at it. That'd be great. Finally, number 5, work with a recruiter. They'll take your resume and revise the crap out of it and give it back to you. They'll expect you to then work with them, but you'll have a good resume. And then you can just continue to update as the years go on. And this is actually the perfect segue into the second tool that I really wanted to focus on today, and that's working with a recruiter. The following tips are from a recruiter who has worked with multiple enterprise tech companies. She was able to put together this list, and this list in full is available for download on my website, completely free. Again, all of these resources will be on my resource page at the very top under episode 7. Download it, study it, memorize it. These tips are gold. So when you're applying for jobs, make sure you meet at least 90% of the job requirements when applying. The hiring manager may have some flexibility. Keep it narrowed. Only apply to a max of 3 to 4 jobs at a time within a particular company, and make sure that they're all related. If you're applying for any and all jobs, the hiring team may see this as a red flag, and you don't want that. Make sure your resume is up to date and relates to the job description. Again, we go back to tool number 1, right? In going through your resume, no spelling errors. Make sure that it is specific to the industry or specific to the role. Read the must-have skills and utilize them in the description of what you've done in previous roles. So if there is a specific element to working with a CRM, for example, and your resume doesn't have any relation to a CRM, but you do have some experience working with a CRM, make sure that you add that. If it makes your resume slightly longer, that should be fine. If it makes it more than 2 pages, remove or narrow down something. But look at the skills. That's why they list them there, whether it's through a recruiter or whether it's through LinkedIn, Indeed, any of the other job platforms. They will list what they're looking for. Try to narrow it down to exactly what it is that they're looking for as best as you can. Unless you're applying to a design-related job, keep your resume simple, no self-portraits necessary. So again, this kind of goes back to the point of whether or not you want to use a professional font or something that's a little bit more personalized. My resume, the one that I use to apply for the job that I currently have, has a slightly unique font, but it's not something that, screams I am creative with ADHD. It just doesn't. And so make it yours, but don't overwhelm with visuals. No clip art is necessary. The next section is about the recruiter call. Now, most mid to large size companies will have you speak to a recruiter as a first step. This quote-unquote gatekeeper is looking to make sure you fit the must-haves for the role, have solid communication, and are keeping an eye out for any red flags. Use these tips to help. Number 1, be prepared to explain any job hops. If you were only at a company for a few months, make sure you can articulate why you left so soon. Have an answer ready for the why are you interested in X company and Y role. The company wants to know that you chose them because you are genuinely invested in what they're doing. Be concise. It's easy to start rambling on these calls, so make sure you answer the question directly and feel free to add, does that answer your question? Is there any additional detail that I can provide? Again, they are focused on communication, so if you need to further communicate a point or if you have a question about their question, make sure that you are asking those questions. Be thorough. Stay away from bashing previous employers and colleagues. This is a huge red flag. If you're looking for a new role due to job dissatisfaction, find a way to articulate this without trash talking the company, your boss, or your peers. Nothing is worse than going, I just hated the whole department, and they just didn't know how to work with other people. And avoid it. Professionalism is vital here. Even if you had frustrations, find a way to articulate it so that it sounds like you are not coming from a negative place. Again, frustrations are frustrations. You're looking forward. You're looking to your next opportunity. So don't get hung up on the past. Last note on this particular section for the recruiter call, have questions ready. Ask about next steps, what the interview process entails. And as a role develops, ask some role-related questions. What does my day-to-day look like? Are there, any hidden tasks or types of skills that I should have that maybe aren't so apparent? Should I know an advanced level of Excel? Do you guys use XYZ platform? Next up in this section is the interview. Again, I don't know how many times I've said this during this episode, but do your research. Ask your recruiter to help you prep for the interview. What kinds of questions will be asked? Who are the interviewers? What can I do to ensure I'm ready? If you know who your interviewers are, look them up on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is your best friend. I'm telling you. LinkedIn is it's so powerful. It really is. Use LinkedIn. The next point, practice. Write down a few projects that you've completed, problems you've solved, accomplishments, failures you've had, anything that you think is vital that you've experienced in previous roles. Practice speaking through these examples out loud using the STAR method. I will have a link to this article that I reference this method from on my resources page. I'm going to say that until you memorize it because it's where I'm putting all this stuff. But STAR is an acronym that stands for S, situation, set the scene and give the necessary details of your example. T, task, describe what your responsibility was in that situation. A, action, explain exactly what steps you took to address it. R, result, share what outcomes your actions achieved. So that is the STAR method. Again, I will have a link to it on my website, resources, the resources page. Go there. The next one is answer the question asked. Make sure you understand the question and don't be afraid to ask for it to be rephrased or qualified. Make sure you are answering the question directly and concisely. Are you seeing a pattern? I am. So concise communication and over communication is really vital here. If you don't understand, there are some situations when you can just kind of go off just on an ad lib type of rant, if you will, but this probably isn't the position that you want to be in when you are just rambling. If you don't understand the question, ask them to rephrase it or ask them to maybe give you an example. Next is have thoughtful questions ready for each interviewer. While they are interviewing you, you also need to investigate whether this is the right role and company for you. Questions are so important. I love getting asked questions by candidates that we are looking to hire. It's what does my day-to-day look like? Or what is, kind of the overall mentality around, I don't know, just working from home. Well, I guess kind of in this example, most of us are working from home if we are lucky enough to be in that position. But just get to know the company, get to know the role, what is something that's exciting that happens quarterly, or what is something that you wish you could have told yourself when you were hired here. Explore the company. If this is a place that you're going to invest most of your time during the week to, it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to get a good feel for it. Is it the right place? Is it the right role? Is it the right kind of environment that you want to be in? Ask questions. It's okay. And finally, we have some other tips from this recruiter. Again, thank you so much for these tips. They are very, very helpful, and these will be available on my website. ask your recruiter if you'd be able to speak with someone in the role for an informal chat. So this way you can gain more insight into the day-to-day interview process, etc. So that kind of feeds off of what we just talked about, right? You're asking questions, but in this case, it would be someone who is in your position, someone who has maybe been there for a couple of weeks, a couple of months, maybe a couple of years, sometimes a couple of decades. So they're going to know the process. It's going to be at the top of their mind. So ask them just how their days go. What does it look like? Make sure you understand the timeline. This one is so important. Your recruiter should be able to give you realistic timelines for each step. Now, if you haven't heard back within that time frame, reach out to the recruiter for an update. If I am someone who is very persistent when it comes to emails. So when I was working with a recruiter to get the position that I'm in now, it was, I was regularly talking with her, regularly reaching out like, hey, happy Monday, happy Tuesday. I don't email them every day, specifically if they are a recruiter for the company that you're looking to get hired from. But communicate so that you have a realistic expectation in mind when it comes to the timeline. Should I expect to hear from you next week, or when can I expect to hear from you is maybe a better way to phrase that. When can I expect to hear from you or the team? Thank you for your time today. You can also use your network. Find out who you know that already works at the company you're interested in, so you can ask for referrals or an informal meet and greet with relevant managers. And you know where you can do this? LinkedIn, guys. I'm telling you, LinkedIn, if you want to sponsor this show, I wouldn't say no. Anyways, last but not least, negotiate your offer. There may be some flexibility with the company, but ensure that you're open with your recruiter and understand what that flexibility is before you even get your offer. If the recruiter says, they're looking to spend about $50,000 per year for this specific role, if they give you that much information, then, you can probably expect to ask for a slight increase, but don't go in and go, I would like $100,000 for this role, because the answer is going to be no. Keep your expectations in check. You are the only person with your experience, so it's time for you to make your move, but keep your expectations in check so that you can keep moving forward. So a couple of additional tips that I wanted to share with everyone. If you've never worked with a recruiter before, they are free. There are staffing agencies all around the country, all around the world. Their job is to filter in candidates and find the best roles for them. They are hired by the companies to, again, be the quote-unquote gatekeeper for that specific role. Their job is to find the right candidate. So if you are in a position of looking for a job or your next opportunity and you're not working with a recruiter, I highly, highly suggest that you do. There are a couple of great recruiting, national staffing companies. There's ones that are local here to Chicago. I would recommend that you go to Google, you type in whichever location you're thinking about moving, or whichever location you currently live, or look up remote staffing companies or staffing agencies. But make sure that you put in staffing agencies and do your research. If you are looking for a corporate position and you stumble across a temporary staffing agency, they'll be able to assist you with temporary positions. But if you're looking for a direct hire, they're not going to be the one for you. So in your own way, you kind of need to recruit a recruiter. So look at who is a recruiter on LinkedIn. Do you have any recruiters that are in your network? Can they connect you with any specific types of agencies? Or Do they know of any agencies that maybe are working specifically remote, or maybe work specifically for the manufacturing industry or the movie industry or the food industry? I mean, they are out there and they are free for you to use. Let me say that again. They are free for you to use. So I didn't know that until I lived in New York City, and my sister-in-law was just like, you know, if you are ever looking for a position, use a recruiter, especially in New York, because everything is a scam. But luckily, I didn't need to use a recruiter in New York City. However, knowing that a recruiter was free to me was a game changer. So it will lift that impasse feeling, at least for some of you, I hope, that, okay, here's a minor next step. I can reach out to the staffing agency. They will get in touch with me. They will set my expectations. They will talk with me. They'll get to know who I am. And then they're going to hunt for you while you also hunt for you. It's a win-win in my honest opinion. So again, all of these tips will be available on my website. Go to ashleysterling.com/resources. Each of the tips from the recruiter preparation and a free downloadable resume template will be available. If you're in the market for a job, please reach out to me through LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, or my website. If I can help you connect with the right people, let's make it happen. Thank you, everyone, for listening all the way through this episode. This one is one that I'm very passionate about, especially with everything that's going on in the world. You are not in this fight alone. There are resources. There are opportunities. There are people whose job it is to find you a job. So use these tools if you need to. Use these tools if you want to. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, you're a champion.
For more resources, head to ashleysterling.com and subscribe to Gusto with Ashley Sterling wherever you listen to podcasts.